I have the distinct honor of welcoming our speaker today, Professor Kathleen Dean Moore, for a conversation about nothing less than the survival of the planet. A heated debate about fossil fuel exports in the region has set the stage perfectly for her talk today. So Professor Moore has spent many years pondering the dilemma of right action in a complicated world. So, among other published works, she's the co-editor of Moral Ground, Ethical Action for a Planet in Peril, which is a compilation work of 100 or so great thinkers around the world and their thoughts about the impending climate crisis. So I would just say to you that you should prepare to be challenged and encouraged by what you hear today. So on behalf of all the members of our Climate Action Coalition, including Physicians for Social Responsibility, Greenpeace, 350 PDX, Interfaith Power and Light, and the tireless McKinley family, I present Professor Kathleen Dean Moore.
Oh man, it is really thrilling to see all of you here today. I mean, it is thrilling to me that you came out here. You know, why are you here? You could be shopping. You could be drag racing. You could be doing any number of soul-devouring things, but instead, you decided to come out here into this community of caring, and I understand that decision completely. Thank you for coming. And I have to say that it's a thrill for me too, and a little bit nervous-making, because I feel that today is kind of a coming out for me. I have left the university so that I could use all my working time towards climate change. So, you don't have to call me Professor Moore anymore. That's all right. You never did. I feel that that is a time when a person who has been active can make the transition to becoming an activist. I don't know quite what that means, but I feel that today is the time to figure it out. And so thank you very, very much. I think your example is going to be huge for me and for each of the other people in this room and beyond. I feel, and you'll have to tell me if you share this, I feel that we're rising on a cresting wave. I feel that all across the country, people all around the world, isn't that right? Do you have that feeling? Finally. Finally, after a kind of silence, like the silence of an abused spouse, finally we are coming to be able to speak our minds, and we're standing shoulder to shoulder and taking back our rights and our communities and our democracy, our futures, and our health. And it seems as though maybe some of our leaders, maybe, are going to follow our lead. That would be a very good thing. And it's about time. I don't need to tell you that the atmosphere is now collecting every day heat equivalent to the explosion of 400,000 Hiroshima bombs every day, today, and 365 days a year. I've been sending out a quiz to everybody I can think of, and it goes like this. It tells that fact about the Hiroshima bombs, and then it says, if your house is on fire, what should you do? A, stare into the flames and say, this isn't happening. B, loudly debate whether the fire was caused by human agency, an arsonist, or by nature, natural variation in the temperature of the house. C, write grants to study how fast the fire is advancing. D, appoint commissions to study how to adapt to life in the burnt-out rubble of a house that once was inexpressibly beautiful. Of course not. You put out the damn fire. You throw everything you've got to it. There are children in that house. There are billions of children in that house. And according to a new letter from 500 scientists led by a team from Stanford University, I'm sure you got this message as well, by the time today's children have grown to middle age, the life support systems of the earth will be irretrievably damaged unless we take concrete, immediate action. Who are the children? I know one of them. Her name is Zoe, and she's my granddaughter. She's 6. And in the evening, she lies in bed with her nightlight on because she's just a little bit afraid of the dark. And she sings and she giggles herself to sleep. Her new song is laugh, kookaburra, gay your life must be. When she's middle-aged, if we don't take immediate action, the Earth's life support systems will be irretrievably damaged. Water to drink, fresh air to breathe, food systems to sustain her. Zoe? My Zoe? And I hear that child giggling, and I say to myself, that's it. It's over. I'm not going to do anything in my working life but try to make the world safe for the laughter of children who are just a little bit afraid of the dark. Well, the first thing then that is very important to say is we can do this. Yes. We can. We can keep the temperature rise below 2 degrees, which gives the children at least a chance. Gives them at least a chance for a thriving life. And James Hansen, as you well know, ran the numbers. If we start this year, 2013, and achieve a 6% global reduction in carbon emissions this year, 6% every subsequent year, and at the same time, if we begin a massive reforestation plan and a massive soil sequestration campaign, we can keep the temperature below 2 degrees Celsius rise. Yes. We can. If we wait until 2020, it's a 15% rise. If we wait until 2030, it's too late. So that's our work this year, 6%. We can do that. The second thing I want to say is I want to be really clear about what I believe. There may not be any doubt, but I come to this as a environmental ethicist. And the thing that becomes clear to me is that although climate change is a scientific issue and we're grateful for the help of people like James Hansen and other scientists, and although it's a political and an economic issue, global warming is primarily a moral issue. It's a result of a moral failure, and it calls for a moral response. So it's not just that it's monumentally stupid, it's wrong to wreck the world. What could be clearer? And to take what we need for our profligate lives and to leave this ransacked and dangerously unstable world for our children, that's not worthy of us as moral beings. And to let it all slip away, all those little lives, the plants and the animals, the song of a frog, the stripes in the throat of a lily, the scent of a Douglas fir, to let it slip away because we're too busy, or because we have to get the kids to soccer practice, or because we don't care enough, that's wrong. And when fossil fuel companies, to make astonishing and unimaginable profits, show themselves willing to take down the systems that sustain our lives, to sustain human life as we know it on Earth, that's moral monstrosity on a cosmic scale. That's what we're up against. This glibness from the oil companies, this kind of blithe disregard, this disdain that the fossil fuel companies show for us and for the world, that's what angers me. Don't worry, Rex Tillerson says, who made $320 million last year as the chairman of ExxonMobil. Human beings have adapted for millennia. We will adapt to this. And then that wonderful, the advertisement you've seen about the resiliency of the earth. Maybe you've seen it. It's a picture of the globe, beautiful picture of the globe from space. And it's a mobile ad, and underneath it says, Mother Earth is a tough old gal. That kind of disdain. I wrote to them, and I said, if the earth were your mother, she would grab you in one rocky hand and hold you underwater until you no longer bubbled. philosopher, and I'm not supposed to say things like that. That's not philosophical, that is more like ranting. And what we need is moral reasoning, and I do believe that. You know, I don't want to be glib either. What we need is moral reasoning. We need to be clear about what we care about, and we need to give reasons to support those. And that these reasoned public discourse is what we need, a reasoned public discourse that allows us to affirm our deepest beliefs, check them against our experience and the experience of other people. So scientists have reached an overwhelming consensus on the facts of climate change, backed up by evidence. What we need is a corresponding consensus about the moral urgency of climate change. The moral urgency of climate change backed up by our very best reasons. So some years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, my colleague Michael Nelson and I decided that what we could do as philosophers is try to create this international conversation about what we really care about. So we wrote to about 100 of the world's moral leaders, people like Desmond Tutu and Wangari Maathai and the Dalai Lama, and we asked them, in 2,000 words or less, to answer this question. Do we have a moral obligation to the future to leave a world as rich in possibilities as our own? We got back a stunning set of responses, and we put them together and categorized them and came up with 14 really good reasons why we have an obligation to stop climate change now for the sake of the future. I won't read all of them, but for the survival of humankind, for the sake of the children, for the sake of justice, to prevent the greatest violation of human rights the world has ever seen, because compassion requires it, because we love the world, for the sake of all forms of life on the planet, and for the stewardship of God's creation, and the list goes on. So I thought that today it would be worthwhile pausing just for a little while to talk about some of those reasons, just to be reminding ourselves why we came out on a lovely day to engage in this kind of action. I've chosen 3. Philosophers can't help themselves. Everything in philosophy comes in 3s. And in fact, if you're taking notes today, this is going to be really easy. I have 3 points to make, and each point has 3 subpoints. I'm going to ask, why are we doing this work? What makes it hard and challenging? And third, what do we need to do? Okay, so first of all, why do we need to stop climate change? Well, one reason I've picked out, maybe randomly, is for the sake of justice. And we all know that climate change is a violation of justice. And the problem isn't just that people are going to suffer, but that they're going to suffer unjustly, in violation of any principle of equitable distribution. And that some of us are going to enjoy the presumed advantages of the reckless consumption of fuels and fossil goods, and in the process we're going to make some of us insanely rich. And at the same time, other people are going to suffer from this profligate burning because we're offloading the consequences of our actions onto the people who have never known its benefits, won't know its benefit, and are powerless to resist. Who are the people who are powerless to resist? Who are the ones with no voices? Future people? Plants and animals? Marginalized people, geographically margins, peoples on the margins of the continent, people on the margins of the economy, and the children. Who speaks for them? What in God's name did they do to deserve what's coming at them? And while I'm asking about deserving, what did the oil companies deserve to get these riches? You know, Carl Safina wrote in this book, he says, this is our shame, not only because we choose it, it's shame because the unborn who did not choose it will come saddled with all conceivable consequences. Shame because the poor who did not choose it will be hit hard and worst. That is not merely unsustainable, that is unjust. So that's the first reason that I would cite for you, and then I see your head shaking. I'm telling you what you already know, and I apologize for that. You already know that if we don't act to slow climate change, to stop the oil industry, that we will be betraying our children. So let's talk about the kids. Of course they didn't make this mess. Of course they don't deserve what's coming at them. Nevertheless, they're going to have to live in whatever's left of the world after we get done using it up, wrecking it. water shortages, collapsed agricultural systems, collapsed fishery systems, spreading disease, wars for resources, already documenting increasing violence in the overwhelming temperatures, great massive movements of people driven from their homes. So I asked my friend Brian Doyle, he's a Portland poet, you must know Brian. I said, Brian, put this in words for me. Why do we have this obligation to our children? And here's what he wrote me. Because we swore and vowed to every god we ever imagined or invented or dimly sensed that we would care for our children with every iota of our energy when they came to us miraculously from the sea of the stars. Because they are the very definition of innocent, and every single blow and shout and shiver of fear that rains down upon them is utterly undeserved and unfair and unwarranted. Because we used to be them, and we remember dimly what it was like to be small and frightened. And I would add to that, because we promised them. Our children came into the world, we held them in our arms, and with tears in our eyes, we promised them that we would give them the world, that we would do whatever was necessary to keep them safe in that world. And so here's what obsesses me. What are we going to say when we come toward the end of our lives and our grandchildren come to us with their own babies in their arms and they ask us what we did to stop climate change? And before we can bring our shaking voices to answer, they're going to interrupt us and they're going to say, don't tell me you didn't know. You knew. Don't tell me you thought there was time. There wasn't. Don't tell me you didn't know what to do. Anything would have been better than nothing. Don't tell us that the forces against you were too great. Nothing is greater than the forces against us now. Reason number 3. I thought that since we were in this beautiful space, that we ought to make some sort of reference at least to divine creation. Do you remember, perhaps, coming into a space just like this and singing for the beauty of the earth, for the glory of the skies, some of you? And the last line, our grateful praise. Our grateful praise. You know, climate change, I believe, is a failure of reverence. It's a failure to honor and protect all the little lives in the forests and the seas and the bird, frog, all the things of creation. Now, I don't know if you believe that the world was created by God, or if you think that it was created by the creative urgency of the universe, and it doesn't really matter. If it's God, do not think for 1 minute that God is indifferent to the fate of his creation. God is the one who took the time every single day to say, and it was good. And I don't know if an omniscient being can feel grief, but I can imagine God pressing his fist against his mouth in sorrow and in rage to keep from crying out in the night. And if God is out there crying out, how can we hear him if it's not in the storms and in the floods and in the droughts? But let's just say that you don't believe in God. And let's say you think that the world was created by this beautiful creative urgency that has created all the universe and the solar system and the planets. Even under those circumstances, you recognize, I'm sure, that this world, this planet is irreplaceable. These life forms are irreplaceable. They're essential. They're beautiful and fearsome. They are beyond human understanding. They are crazy creative. That kind of language, that's the language of the sacred. So even if you believe that God didn't create the world, but that it created itself, even so, reckless destruction is a failure of reverence. So that's what I would offer you in my way of reasons, those 3 reasons for why we need to take action, and we really can't wait. There are many, many other reasons, but those are the 3 that speak strongly to me. Now, before I go on to the second thing, I want to check the mic. Are you hearing me all right in the back? Okay. Would you rather I backed away so I don't pop my peas? Okay, then what I want to do is move on to the second major topic, which is what is making it hard? Why has it been so hard for us to take action? What's blocking us? When we have these overwhelming reasons to act that we've just articulated, reasons that are based on our most fiercely held values, why is it so hard to get moving? And I believe it's because we believe three things that are false. So let me offer you up these three falsehoods that I think make it very hard for us to move forward and for our neighbors to move forward, and for all the people who aren't here to move forward, in case they create some sort of talking points for other people. Now here I might be challenging you a little bit. First of all, I don't believe what everyone is saying is that we have met the enemy and he is us. I want to be really careful about that because it's really tricky. You all know what externalization is, right? That the reason that the fossil fuel industry creates such beautiful, incredible profits, for one reason, is that it externalizes its costs on the universe, on us and our children. It clears the air through our lungs. It clears the water through our digestive systems. That is an externalization of its cost. And what we are seeing today, I do believe, is the externalization of shame. And that this may be one of the biggest triumphs of big oil, to make consumers blame themselves for climate change, even while the corporations are spending billions of dollars to transform us into mindless consumers of self-destructive and cheap consumer goods and fossil fuels. To make us blame ourselves, even while they're leveraging their bribes to Congress to be sure that we don't have alternative ways to heat our homes, to travel to our jobs, and to find some way to ease our grief at this fundamental disconnection from the earth that we love. So when I hear people say, we have met the enemy and it is us, I say in my most philosophical voice, that's bullshit. Of course, we should spend and invest and work and travel more thoughtfully. That's huge. Of course, we should all dramatically cut our use of fossil fuels. And that said, I didn't cut corners and cause an oil gusher in the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm not the one who's doing my best to undermine the EPA. And I'm not lobbying, or what we call bribing Congress, to open drilling in the Arctic Ocean. I didn't cut funding for alternative energy sources. I'm not sitting around in a boardroom plotting how to use every loophole and law and lawyer and lie to run over the people who are trying to protect their homes. The point I want to make is that the big oil companies are very happy to claim that they are simply responding to public demand. But it is very clear how much the corporations have been manipulating public demand. So we have met the enemy, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure it isn't me. But while big oil is externalizing all its other costs on me, I will not allow them to externalize the moral shame of its attack on the earth. That's one. Number two falsehood that I think is making a lot of trouble for us. Now, this one was called to my attention very recently by a person who emailed me. I get lots of emails out of the blue telling me how wrong I am about various things. That's really useful, because of course I am. And then I get a chance to fix it. What he tells me is that do not be deceived. Climate change is not about climate change. Really. What is it? Now, I have to tell you a story. So I'm at this meeting of journalists in Missoula, and afterwards, just by happenstance, I happened to walk out the door and walk home with the representative from the American Petroleum Association. Huge man. Trench coat, shaved head, like big man. And I just decided I'm going to engage him in some conversation. And I start the conversation by saying, "Oh, do you have children?" He turns to me and he puts his chest in my face. And he says, "Don't you ever underestimate the power of the fossil fuel industry." I go, that's the first thing you said today that I believed. What I think we're seeing is that climate change has become much more than climate change. The struggle to slow or stop climate change is also a struggle to reclaim democracy. Yes? about the president are bought and sold like commodities, like corn or pork bellies. And the top 5 contributors to the last election, all of them, big oil. Fossil fuel industries spent $450 million to buy the last election. That's cheap if it allows the industry to continue to make those kind of profits. Exxon, and I'm quoting here our friend Bill McKibben, last year Exxon made a higher annual profit than any company in the history of money. Wow. Now Plato had it figured. Way, way back, Plato had it figured. He wasn't a fan of democracy because he thought that democracies were essentially unstable. That every democracy will ultimately, sooner or later, turn into a plutocracy, the rule by the rich, because you can always buy votes. And every plutocracy will necessarily, eventually evolve into anarchy, because at some point, the people won't put up with it anymore. It's very clear to me that we have reached the point of the plutocracy. What's not clear to me is whether we're going to be able to turn around and restore or regain a democracy, or whether we will have to move into anarchy and smaller groups and try to figure this out for ourselves. But I think it's that serious, the situation that we face right now. I also think that the struggle to slow or stop climate change is beyond climate change. Also, it's a struggle to reinvent who we are as human beings. That climate change has everything to do with the systematic dehumanization of persons on Earth. That climate change is what happens. These enormous profits are what happens when people believe that they are essentially individual, that they thrive in competition with everyone else. When they believe in the essential dualism of all creation, that humankinds are the pinnacle of creation, separate from and better from all the other creatures on Earth who exist only to serve our own needs and derive all their value from their value to serve our greed. Or whether when you believe in human exceptionalism, the notion that we're exceptions to all the ecological rules that govern the rest of the world. We had to believe that in order for capitalism to survive. In order for it to be okay to do what capitalism does, we had to have that worldview that was based on competition between individuals and the absolute reduction of all the rest of the world to mere material brutes. So what we have here is a chance to reimagine ourselves and to notice that this, what I'll call the enlightenment worldview, this individualist, materialist, dualist, exceptionalist view, is a little blip in the history of humankind that arose simultaneously with capitalism, and my guess is that it will leave the planet when capitalism finds another place. What will take its place is what indigenous people, all the religions of the world except for the desert religions, and all the ecologists are telling us is true about human beings, that we are essentially members of communities of interdependent, interconnected parts, that the thriving of the whole depends on the thriving of the parts, that the thriving of the parts creates the thriving of the whole. That we're not exceptions to the rules. We also are part of the earth that is finite and bound by these intricate interdependencies. So the struggle against climate change isn't only about climate change, it's a pivot point in human history. It's what has been called the Great Turning. It requires a new set of answers to the three big questions. What is the world? What is the place of a human being on the planet? And how then shall we live? Finally, I want to talk about the third mistake that I think makes this so hard. And that's the mistake that says this is hopeless, that there's nothing we can do. It's over, it's done. And that even if it weren't, there's nothing I can do as an individual in my life that's going to make any difference. You know, I was at a conference up in Sitka, and one of the people there got a phone call from her daughter, and his daughter says, "Hi, Mommy, where are you, and what are you doing?" And she said, "Well, I'm in Sitka, Alaska, and today my friends and I are going to save the world." And the little girl says, "Oh, well then I better let you go." You know, we laugh at ourselves when we say we're going to try to save the world, but it's about that, isn't it? We laugh at our ambitions, but it's about that. Okay, so let's face it, that our options are limited. Our cities and our homes and our transportation systems are disgracefully designed. Destructive ways of living are protected by tangles of profit and power around the world. Corporations are acting like psychopaths, and we have run out of time. That's where we are. And Gus Speth, the former dean of the forestry people over at Yale, says all we have to do to destroy the planet's climate and ecosystem and leave a ruined world to our children and our grandchildren is to keep doing exactly what we are doing today. This is a problem. We've built a society that's fixated on the future, and so we are readily disempowered by hopelessness. And I want to say that we're disempowered also by hope, that we need to leave them both aside. So blind hope, it's going to be fine, relax. Everything's going to be fine, is a kind of moral abdication. I don't have to do anything. And the earth is going to hell no matter what I do. That kind of blind despair, that's a kind of moral abdication, because I don't have to do anything then. So either I have this kind of blind hope, in which case I don't have to do anything, or I have blinding despair, in which case I don't have to do anything. Lucky me, either way, I don't have to do a darn thing. But that's a fallacy, a false dichotomy. But because between this hope and the despair is this broad moral ground that we call personal integrity, wholeness, moral integrity, acting in such a way, I'm sorry, I keep hitting that we honor our moral beliefs, to live gratefully, because we believe that life is a gift. Not because we believe we're saving the world, because we believe life is a gift. And to act reverently, because we believe the world is reverent, because we believe the world is sacred. To live simply, because we don't believe in taking more than our fair share. To act lovingly toward the earth, because we love it. Do you see what I'm saying? That there are motivations for acting that are beautiful and powerful and have nothing at all to do with the consequences of our action. Instead, they have everything to do with our moral motivations and consistency with what we believe is right and true. And what this means then is a fierce, tireless, and maybe ultimately tragic defense of the world against those who would wreck it. That, I think, is true. So what are we going to do? Barbara Kingsolver. You know this one? If you run out of hope at the end of the day, rise in the morning and put it on with your shoes. I would say if you run out of integrity at the end of the day, rise and put that on with your shoes. Either way, 3 things I think we can do. I call them the 3 C's. Conscientious objection, creative disruption, and courageous, relentless citizenship. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about conscientious objection. This is a call to a way of life the call to conscientious objection is a response to a way of life that reduces us to consumers rather than moral agents. Now, soldiers used to say hell no to an unjust war. Can we say the same thing to an unjust but far more disastrous economic system? In other words, can we find the gumption to refuse to let big oil make us foot soldiers in its war against the world? What I'm saying is that every decision we make, how we travel, whether we travel, how we heat our homes, how we educate our children, how we work, how we invest our money, how we allow others to invest our money, speaks to who we are. And that by our decisions we can say, I believe in this, and I don't believe in that. I won't participate in that. I will fully invest myself in this. And don't think that those kind of objections to the system don't matter, because studies show that the one most powerful way to influence people to change is to show them that another person they respect, that would be you, has made a change. So conscientious objection, I think, is a joyous and liberating response. This is divestment. This is the bicycle. This is local food. This is the well-insulated home. This is recycled paper. This is the birth control pill. This is the potluck. This is the garden. This is the poison-free yard. These are all the things I believe in, and this is what I will do. And a note to parents. We have parents. Okay, and a note to grandparents. This is how to free your children from the tyranny of consumerism. I do believe we have a parental responsibility to be clear with our children about what they need. and that this is our chance. This is our chance to make good decisions about what they need and to refuse what they don't. So conscientious objection certainly applies to our decisions as parents. We can't be afraid not to buy them the right kind of soccer shoes. Creative, well, that's okay. We got some soccer parents here. That was applause from the soccer moms. We're feeling the kind of pressure. So the first C then would be conscientious objection. Hell no. I will not be a foot soldier in the war against the world. You can't make me do that. I will say, hell no, I won't be part of that. The second one, creative disruption. And this is what you all are involved in. The way I understand this is that we're trying to make moral arguments that speak to people, but that they're abstract. Almost everything I've said so far today is really abstract. We have to find a way to make the moral arguments in people's faces, and we have to give them moral muscle. And that this takes imagination. And it takes creative action that's based on all the wonderful, joyous human arts. Music and theater, street parades, children's choirs, literature, all these beautiful human expressions of grief and glory, a call to witness, to tell the truth about the moral consequences of an oil-filled future. So if it's the truth that big coal is going to destroy the dreams of children, then I think we're going to have to tape the photos of the children to the tracks and force somebody to decide to run over them. I know. And if we can't do that, then can we face up to the facts that they are destroying the children? Or are we going to back away from that? I think we have to invite the children to draw pictures of their dreams and invite the drills to go through those pictures of the children's dreams. We have to find some way to make people understand the enormity of what is being done. This is the choir singing at the crossing. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's sad. This is the hearse that follows the fracking trucks everywhere they go. These are the funeral bouquets at the turnoff to the logging site. It isn't always cute and it isn't always funny. But whenever you have a massive moral failure of government, when you have massive lying, somebody's going to have to tell the truth. And my suggestion is that our banners be banners that tell the truth, not just slogans, but truth-telling banners. What is going on? History's our guide. Every point in human history, in America at least that I've been able to see, have been the result, when we've had a major change, it's been the result of a rising wave of moral affirmation. You look back in history, a moral affirmation, we hold these truths to be self-evident, and the world changed forever. Another moral affirmation, on the first day of January in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state shall be thenceforth and forever free. And the direction of history reversed its flow. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, and the troopers and the growling dogs stumbled back. Not right away, but they stumbled back. Hell no, I won't go. And a war ended. Not easily, not right away, but eventually. Earth shall be whole and life-sustaining, and humankind joyous and just. I don't want to say it's easy, but it'll be easier and lots more fun if it's creative. And if it uses all the forces, all the joyous, imaginative forces of the human mind to create this kind of truth-telling culture. And then finally, courageous and relentless citizenship. This is where the personal becomes the political. This is where democracy takes shape. This is where you make your voice heard by crying out in all forms. The first thing you do in the morning and the last thing you do at night, being heard. And now I'm going to say something that is actually backed up by scientific research. Because the question becomes, okay, we can make our voices heard, but what do we demand? What do we say must happen? And so I wrote to my colleagues, my economist friends, and my other kinds of friends who are studying these kind of things, and here's what they say. These are already part of your agenda. I'm so proud. I'm so pleased. Number 1, stop, block, and prevent all investments that expand fossil fuel infrastructure. This means no coal port expansion, no coal trains, no liquid natural gas depots, no pipelines, no new roads to carry the equipment, no fracking pads, no suburban megaballs, no Keystone XL pipeline. Number 2, immediate implementation of compulsory policies that restrict carbon pollution by price or regulation. It can be any combination of any of these, but we will not make progress until we are paying the real price in taxes that we're already paying the real price in the health of our children. 78% of the people in America support a progressive revenue-neutral tax at the wellhead. When is the last time that 78% of Americans agreed on anything? And to have this kind of agreement on this seems to be a clear mandate for the government to move ahead. British Columbia is doing it. I don't know, California seems to be doing it. So here's what I want to say about democracy, that it's true that big oil has soaked the congressional representatives in natural gas and oil. It's up to us to hold their feet to the fire. And then perhaps our elected leaders are going to find the will to help us put out the fire that would destroy our homes and our livelihoods and the beautiful and life-sustaining planet. So let me end by thanking you. I admire you so, so deeply. I am so grateful for you, for your courage, for your investment of energy and time and expertise. And I want to leave you with just this one quotation. It's from Clarissa Estes. Do not lose heart. We were made for these times. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. I recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one. There have never been more able vessels in the water than there are right now across the world. And they are fully provisioned and able to signal one another as never before in the history of humankind. There will always be times when you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. Together, we are a great ship, and we are under sail. Rise up!